Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of whatever this is. Today I'm coming to you from my friend's place in Reservoir. It's a beautiful day today. I started recording this outside and it started raining, so it threw off my whole groove and I can't be bothered to edit it. But anyway, I'm coming to you having actually taken notes and attempted to structure this for the very first time, because I think it will make it vaguely more interesting if I stay on topic and have something of a format. But yeah, I just finished reading the book 1984, so I thought I'd talk to you guys about my thoughts on that. I listened to the audiobook and I read by Stephen Fry, and I finished it over like 3 days. So I was listening to a lot of it every day. And I read the appendix as well, which was all about Newspeak, which is really interesting. And there's so many different things to say about this book. It's one of the greatest books that I've ever read. If you haven't read it and you're like, I kind of know what it's about Big Brother, it's about totalitarianism and, thought police and stuff and thought crime, I understand it completely. I would say there's a lot more to it than maybe people think. It contains all of those ideas and they're fascinating and executed perfectly, but it's also like so much more than that. Like the narrative's so emotive and honestly bleak and oppressive. Like it's one of the most oppressive feeling books I've ever read. And I've read Cormac McCarthy and I've read American Psycho and stuff like that. So, it did feel really heavy the last couple of days, and it was kind of like in my head like a worm just burrowing away at me, itching at my brain. Now that I've finished it, I'm like, don't have to read that again for like at least 5 years. But it's still, there's so much I want to say about it. It's such a good book, but we're just going to focus on language, and it's pertaining to contemporary political movements in our world today. For example, like Newspeak. For those of you who don't know, Newspeak is the language system that the party in 1984 are attempting to develop to replace English as the lingua franca. And a lot of like announcements and articles and stuff utilize Newspeak in the world of 1984, but it hasn't quite gotten to the point of being like a fully utilizable language. I think in the book they're on like edition 10, and the idea is actually to remove words and find replacements for them, rather than to expand the vocabulary. They want to diminish the vocabulary as much as possible. The idea being that if you don't have the language available to you to think things that are anti-party or outside the parameters of what the party deems acceptable, then you cannot think those thoughts. And therefore thought crime is impossible because you don't have the language or the ideas for thought crime. And this, makes me think about how language is so vital to human development. I'm really, really interested in learning more about Noam Chomsky's early work with linguistics and talking about, basically, from what I understand, he disproves blank slate theory by talking so much about, by exploring the fact that humans are like linguistic from birth, basically. We have like language as like a preloaded operating system, sort of, is my understanding. And it reminds me of the Terence McKenna quote where he says that the building block of reality is not the atom, but it is in fact language. And what he means by that is that, sorry, kids screaming out the front of the house. What he means by that is that every single thing that we see in the world, and the entire world in its construction in every single sense, is defined by language and therefore somewhat created by language. And in 1984, the party's understanding of Newspeak as defining reality is very scary and very real in a lot of ways. We don't realize how much language and culture define, and culture is an extension of language, and how this defines everything. We're not these rational beings that interact with the world through this like objective lens. Like culture and language are everything. And this is like something that is important in the political world for us to understand, especially today with the mass media machine. I'm literally talking into one of the Black Mirror's devices right now. They're everywhere. They're omnipresent. I'm definitely not saying anything no one's heard before, right? But the reason it's important to understand that you're not inherently rational, but are instead shaped by language and culture, is because our language and culture is a constantly evolving thing, and it's not just like evolving organically. It's influenced by things. It's influenced by politics and media and art and sociology, whatever. It's like this fascinating thing that's constantly changing, but it changes the way we think. It changes the way we understand the world. And I was thinking about, on both sides of politics, people say such outlandish things sometimes, and you're like, is that meant to, are people meant to think that? Are people meant to believe that when they hear it? And some people do. But I realized the purpose of it is not to convince, but rather to confuse. And that if you're Joe Schmo and you hear bullshit from sources A, B, and C, you're not going to necessarily be like, okay, I need to apply like an academic journalistic rigor to get to the truth of this. You're more likely to actually just disengage and stop engaging with the political apparatus at all. You're going to be like, they're all liars. And the reason why people want to do this is because their core constituents, their core supporters will always support them. But if they can just stop a general consensus from forming among people, then that's also good. Because winning people over is great, but also making people not join your opponent or not organize to form a faction is also vital to the process. So I wrote 3 types of defining what they do. They produce misinfo, disinfo, and pissinfo. And what I mean by pissinfo is just bullshit. It's not really meant to deceive you or confuse you on a really Machiavellian way. It's really more just psychic gibberish, noise, background noise, static in the machine, that you just can't get rid of. And it's we end up with meme culture embracing this element, and producing hilarious results with matcha Labubu raves with my 24 karat Dubai chocolate Labubu, and you're just like, what's happening? And the joke here is just the creating a incoherent sentence that is technically a real sentence using buzzwords that exist in this weird status signifying consumer sphere that is bizarre and weird. But yeah, to most people, it's just noise. It's just noise. It's Khloe Kardashian did what? And this is true of a lot of the theatrics of the MAGA campaign. But I would say it's true of political theatrics in general. I think it's just that I've started calling a lot of the Republican Party frontrunners the cheeseburger people from TV. After Donald Trump spoke at the international annual McDonald's summit and started talking about bombing Iran, I thought that was just too funny. But it's all misinfo, disinfo, or pissinfo. So that's the term pissinfo. Use it in a sentence and have people look at you weird like I do. You can join me in that endeavor if you want to try and bring it into the lexicon. I consider it an anti-newspeak term almost. Maybe, no, not really. Fair enough. But anyway, another aspect of this is that, if you define the parameters of what's real and what's not, then you can really shape reality as you see fit. And it's almost like manifesting. It's almost like manifestation. Just by saying things that aren't true and believing that they're real, they become real. And manifesting is more in the self-help sphere. It reminds me of chaos magic as well, which is, I won't go into it too much because it's a whole other subject, but it's basically condensing arcane practices to their bare essentials for the modern world. And it's basically a heightened, intense form of manifesting. And I've heard people talk about the way that Donald Trump speaks untruths, and then he manifests them till they're real. But you get alternative facts, and then it's just this is just the narrative now. And I think the issue is, when it comes to kind of dismantling this, is that we live in a Aristotelian world where we have categorized everything, like scientifically categorized basically everything. And so what ends up happening is that everything gets put into boxes, and then the boxes get labeled. And what ends up happening is that the labels on the boxes become the point of reference, not the contents of the box. And so when I say Donald Trump, you guys all have a little Wikipedia article drop down in your brain, and it has all of these emotional associations. It's somehow an emotional association Wikipedia article. But when you say it to a conservative, the same thing happens. Same with when you say other names like Hillary Clinton, etc. These things happen to everybody. But the issue is that it means that people aren't talking about the same things when they're talking. And so they're not having a communication directly. They're communicating about different things whilst they're both suffering under the illusion that they're talking about the same thing. And so there's like an element of a debate is just two people like proselytizing to an imagined, like over each other's heads, basically. As for a solution, I don't have one, but I wrote down, we have to keep trying to communicate deeply. So when we're talking about an idea, don't just be like, what do you guys think about abortion? What do you guys think about progressive tax policies? Blah, blah, blah. Like, really, don't just immediately skip to your opinions on things. Try to, like, come to a shared consensus about what the thing is, and then try to come to a shared consensus about values, and then set your opinions from there. So, like, it's like math. You show you're working out. Your teachers always, like, show you're working out when you're doing maths. It's like that. I guess if you do that with people, I feel like you're far more likely to come to some sort of conclusion that could be even like somewhat useful, right? Like when you talk with people, like if you just shout them down, it's not really going to accomplish anything. And if they shout you down, it's not going to accomplish anything. And I'm not tone policing or anything. Like if you want to like be like, oh, well, it's Nazis, I'll just punch Nazis. Have at it, you know? But for the purposes of discussing the nuances inherent in language and the way that politics benefits from twisting these for divisive purposes, I think we need to be thorough with our communication and make sure we say things that we really mean, and also just try to understand what people mean when they say things, because sometimes they say things and you hear one thing but they mean another. And yeah, anyway, thank you for watching. This is my longest video yet. I meant for it to be my shortest one, but I'm jacked up on coffee, so yeah, my apologies. And I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Got the